Okay, actually I'm going to do a video on how to rip Blu Ray discs, and in theory, the same process could be used to rip DVDs, video DVDs and Blu Ray videos. But actually, this process actually you could be using free software, which is called MakeMKV. I'm actually running this copy on Linux, and I have two Blu Ray drives in my computer. I'll kind of go through, there's MakeMKV has this software that you can actually use to rip a Blu Ray disc, but then they also host firmware that allows you to it basically it's just firmware that what they do is they on the normal drive firmware for most systems, essentially they kind of have a intermediary software in the firmware that actually doesn't allow you to see the content that's from other regions. Like, say, if you're it might have content from that is only supposed to be seen by somebody in Germany, and then so they don't allow you to see it if you're a U.S. person, even though it's there. So and then there's other things like limiting the the read write speed of the Blu Ray drive, and some of the other stuff here basically is raw, reading it raw content, and then I guess essentially, the last thing is basically there's ultra high density Blu Ray discs that the only way you're actually going to be able to read them is to install the firmware on the drive, so it can actually bypass all the limitations that the manufacturer's firmware actually puts on the drive, and so obviously it's called Libre drive, and so you can see that actually the drive that I actually have selected right now, I actually has it in on there. And so basically what it does is basically takes essentially the the original firmware that came from the manufacturer, and rewrites it to the drive, but without all the limitations that are on the original firmware. So I mean, it says it's unpatched, but the thing is that that this means that nothing's been changed. Basically, the features that basically limit the Blu-ray's abilities are actually just the only things that are really removed. So you could actually it's region free. It can read data at higher speeds than the firmware, the original firmware actually allows. It can read ultra high density Blu Ray discs on your computer and so forth. So I'm not really going to go through how to install that firmware, but MakeMKV also has resources, or links to resources where you can actually get that firmware. And obviously you need to have a specific type of Blu Ray drive in order to write that firmware to that drive. And I actually have two Blu Ray drives, like I guess I already mentioned, but one of them was I was able to write the firmware to, and the other one actually isn't supported. So so basically, I just have one that's just is stock, and the other one that's basically Libre, a Libre drive, because I wrote the Libre firmware to it. So I guess you can just think of Libre as obviously just free, and so in this case it's just basically free of all the limitations that the manufacturers put on the drive. So anyway, going from that, I have two drives. One's flashed and one's not, and so basically I can use the one that is flashed with the firmware to to remove the limitations to make a copy of the disk. So essentially, I have, in this case, I'm just using. I don't know if you may not have ever seen it, but it's an older video from, I think, in 1982. It's heavy metal. Basically, it's cartoon, adult, content cartoon, but it's called heavy metal, and so I got that loaded in the drive that actually it doesn't have the firmware limitations. So I'm just actually going to go ahead and get that started, or get started. Unless I'm just going to assume that I don't want any subtitles. I just want the English language, so forth and so on. So when this actually loads, I'm going to just select the main title to back up, and leave the rest of the content alone. And so you'll see here, so what I'm going to do is the main title is obviously usually just the largest title, but I don't know if it's always the case, but I'll just make that assumption for this video. And so what I'm going to do is actually just leave the main title selected, and then unselect everything else. And then I'm just going to open this up, and then you can basically see that you have other options here, and these may only be visible because of the region-free ability, and I haven't checked it because by loading it from the other drive, but it doesn't really matter. So what I'm going to actually do is I only know English, and so I'm just going to only select the options for the English language, and unselect French, Spanish, and I don't know if I need these other titles, but I'm just going to leave everything that essentially is just English, and unselect everything that's not. But I could possibly unselect this other stuff. I don't know. I'm just going to unselect this and then just leave it with the the default surround sound, and that's it. And then I just have to basically, I usually put everything in a certain directory. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go to that directory. Basically I just call it my working directory and MakeMKV. So I choose that, and then I'm just going to click on MakeMKV. Okay, so now that process is actually going, I should actually have the file in a bit here. This is doing its thing, and like I say, the drive read and write limitations have been removed, so this process might actually take a little bit less time than it would with a original drive, because they actually put limitations on the read rate on the drives. I don't know the reason for that, but I assume maybe it's to basically make sure the drives last for a longer period of time. I don't know, but anyway, I'm actually making the backup now. I guess so I can also talk about the other things with this. There is in theory, MakeMKV is actually free to use while it's in beta status. So what the author allows people to do is actually you can in theory you can purchase MakeMKV, but while it's still in beta, basically you can use it freely without any limitations. But you actually have to update the license like every 3 months, and so basically the author does make available a license key when the the old one expires. So then you just basically have to find, download, and then install that new license key in order to continue to use it while it's in beta stages. Otherwise, I think if you were actually to purchase it, there's not any real good links to actually purchase it right now. But I think it would cost you like $50. But it could pretty much do what any Blu Ray ripping software can do, and being open source sometimes has this advantage, because obviously I don't even know if other Blu Ray ripping software can actually interface with the drives, the Libre drives, like MKV can, because I don't know. I don't usually use commercial stuff when there's something open source that's available, and that's just because usually I find, even though it's free, they can do everything I need them to do, and I don't have to pay for them. And the other thing is that I'm a Linux user, and if I was to pay for something to rip Blu Ray discs, it would actually be for Windows, and I don't think anybody has anything that actually works with Linux. So that kind of limits my choices for or limits my options, quite a bit, for software to rip Blu Ray discs, and so even though I'm actually using this software in Linux, the interface is kind of pretty much the same for if you're a Mac user or a Windows user. You can download exactly the same software, and it works exactly the same. So I was talking about the license key though, and I was trying to find where well, actually, because I've actually entered the license key, it doesn't look like I can find. Well, maybe it's because I'm actually burning this process, but usually you would have to click in the register thing and then basically enter that code that you downloaded. I also made a disk, an installation disk with extra software for to use with the MKV or MakeMKV for Windows, because obviously I know that pretty much everybody else that doesn't use Linux, which Linux users are pretty limited number of people, but there's actually add-on software for MakeMKV that actually you can basically really makes the license key update process real easy, because all you have to do is basically just run the software, and then it goes and finds the source for the new key, downloads it, and basically installs it in the MKV without having to do anything manually. So but that's only, like I say, it's only for Windows. I mean, it's not really a big deal to find a license key. It's just that I don't know if anybody would actually be having any reason to be using the software in an emergency, like where they couldn't get the key for maybe a few hours or a few days, that they would have to actually burn a Blu-ray disc. I suppose if if you rented something and you want to just make a copy of it, and then just so you could return it on time, then that might be a theoretical issue. But anyway, all that aside, basically you just have to update the license key every theoretically every 3 months or so while it's still in beta. And so this process is actually still going on here. Obviously, it takes a little bit less time to actually rip the disc than it is going to actually take to encode the disc. So what I'm actually going to do after that is basically I'm just going to use another open source program to then load. I would click on open source, and I'll go through that obviously later in this video, but I'll just load the MKV file and then basically just convert it. But I think obviously I'll maybe run the video a little bit to just make sure everything looks as it should be. Obviously there shouldn't be any problem, but I have to wait until it's actually completely ripped. But MakeMKV is also just has the facilities to actually decrypt basically Blu Ray protection for the disc, so that they can avoid basically it works to bypass basically the Blu Ray protection. In theory, if actually like Handbrake, if you could actually just install some add-on program, you could actually possibly just decrypt Blu-ray discs directly from Handbrake. But Handbrake itself does not have the ability to decrypt anything, but you can still use it to rip DVDs as long as you actually have the libraries that are required to decrypt the disc from within Handbrake. So this is actually still going on here. So what I think I'm going to do is actually just I'm going to come back to this video a little bit later, and then we can just continue on. But basically we're still in the process of basically ripping the contents of the main movie into a MKV file, so that I can actually then convert it into some other format. It's not necessary to actually convert it after it's been ripped, because you can actually use the file as it is to it will play in most players, but obviously it might be obviously the reason to actually encode it or transcode it into some other format is to actually cut down the the size of the file. Usually it doesn't do much to the quality, but there can be a lot that can be done to basically reduce the amount of disk space that the video actually takes up on your disk. So essentially, I guess I'm just gonna go ahead and pause the video recording until this process is actually completed, and then I'll go on to loading it into Handbrake and transcoding it into some other format. So I'll be back. Okay, I finished up backing up the drive, so I can close out of this and see that what I should have got. And so this is actually the folder with the file that I actually just got done creating. So obviously it looks like everything's good to go. Removed titles, removed languages, removed subtitles, removed languages, and so forth. So I just have the video. And now what I can actually do is close out of that and down to going into Handbrake. So what we can actually do is I should be able to, click on open source, and I go to where the file was actually created in, and I'm going to load that MKV file, which, like I say, is the main content for the movie that I just ripped from the DVD. And you basically see that, they only have, because I only chose to back up, the main title, there's nothing else to select from. And then within Handbrake, you actually have, many options for, basically, how you can back up the content. And I don't know, I guess that, we can look at, I guess what I can do is I'm just going to choose something here. In theory, Blu Ray, obviously this is not a ultra high capacity or density drive. So, the quality is still almost the best that it can be, but it is maybe not the absolute best. And so we can actually just choose a preset from this list. And so in theory, I'm just going to choose 1080p, with surround sound, which would be partial to that, and then basically it should already be it defaults to, I already had set it up so that it actually saves the transcoded copy to the same directory and folder that the MKB container is actually saved. So obviously this is actually really a complete overview on how to use Handbrake. Is just basically just where I'm just going to show you, that it's actually possible to transcode that video. So basically, it's basically encoding it right now, and as to my estimated time to complete is about an hour or better, and then you can actually just go from there. But so basically now it's transcoding it, and in Handbrake, like I say, you know, there's a rather extensive, you know, amount of options you can actually choose from, you know, to encode things into other video formats in Handbrake that they could actually utilize. I just, you know, this is not meant to be a video on how to use Handbrake per se. It's basically, you know, I'm using Handbrake to actually encode it into something that's in theory a little bit less big in size. So, but I don't know, you know, these videos as they are actually can be played in, you know, like in other streaming systems, and I guess I can't remember the names of some of the resources you can actually use that, but essentially you should be able to still play these backups, and in theory, you know, like on a home theater system, by just loading the content from some, you know, video system that actually, you know, can stream it to your, like your TV or so forth and so on. And I think one example would be like something that's open source is called Jellyfin, and you know, that would allow you to actually just basically, you know, keep all your videos and stuff like that in some folder and some directory on your a theoretical server that you could then just, you know, load and watch movies on your TV or other resource from the server. And you know, Jellyfin usually will support and Jellyfin and other resources that do kind of the same thing, you know, will support MKV format and also MP4, which is just, you know, encoded to basically reduce the amount of space that actually the file takes up. But anyway, while we're still going through this process, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to basically pause this video, and there, I don't, I just basically really just want to show the end results, but I have to wait about an hour and 9 more minutes before that process is done, and so I'll have to just come back and basically just wrap this video up when that's, so, you know, completed.